Boom, boom, boom. Bum, 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 bum. Hey, everybody. Happy weekend. I don't know about where you are, but the weather is perfect where I am. You want to see it? Do. Let's look out the window. It's a beautiful sunny day looking out my office window. But back to me. All right. Do you have your beverage? It's time for simultaneous sip. Here it comes. Yeah. Somebody's in church right now. All right. So I've told you before that one of my natural instincts as an artist, and when I say artist, I mean that sort of loosely in my case. I'm not much of an artist, but I do make my money as an artist, weirdly, for someone who has so little talent in that area. And one of the things that you get used to as someone who deals with visual art all the time is the empty space. So the part of the picture in which there's not much happening is very important to the overall composition of the places where there is a lot happening in your picture. So artists sort of reflexively look for the empty space. It's like, where's my blank space? What's happening in the blank space? And I think that's a good discipline for looking at political stories. Because when there should be something happening that isn't, that tells you something. It tells you something as much as maybe what is happening. So we're watching this the saga play out of the Democrats' memo. And the Democrats' memo allegedly is a response to the Devin Nunes Republican memo, which says, in effect, that the dossier was relied on illegitimately to get the FISA warrant. So that's the main point of the Devin Nunes memo, is that this unreliable piece of work that was paid for by a political campaign was used by the FBI or used against all rules for FISA warrants. Now we're waiting for the temporarily banned Democrats' response memo. And what is there missing? There's something huge happening in the story that's the not reported part. And the reason it's not reported is because it's something that's not happening. All right? So the news is reporting all the things that are happening, but they're missing the biggest part, the thing that's not happening. So let me tell you the thing that's not happening. Now, while the Democrats cannot speak, they can't speak about their memo in detail, partly because of the secrets that are the sources and methods that are in it, I suppose, and partly because it's classified. You can't talk about it. But here's what you can talk about that nobody's saying. And fact check me on this. Maybe somebody is saying this. Where is the Democrat who has seen the Democrats' 10-page memo and characterizes it generally as, well, we're making that dossier story disappear because when you see it in its fullness, you can see that the dossier was either reliable or we had other information which made the dossier just some extra stuff that was tacked on. Now, that would not be a great state secret, right? If you were to simply say, okay, I saw the memo, I can't tell you what the details are of the memo, but I will tell you that the Republicans' main claim that the dossier was the key to the FISA warrant will be, you'll have a new understanding of it when you see our memo. Now, you just like saying dossier. It is a fun word. Now, am I wrong? If the Democrats' memo said something to make the main story overturned, the main story of the Republican menu, that the dossier is faulty and it was used as the main source for the FISA warrant. If that story is not true, you wouldn't need to hear the details of the Democrats' memo. You could still wait to see them. You could simply say, our memo will show that that story is incomplete, and then you'll see it differently once the details are provided to you. Nobody's saying that. That means that the Democrats' memo does not address the only point that matters. Now, I didn't see that coming. So if it turns out that that's true, I'm going to have to back down from my original stance on all of this, which is that probably everybody was just doing their job. Maybe somebody skipped a step or something. But in all likelihood, there was not a grand conspiracy with the Clintons behind everything Russian and everything dossier and everything else. So I was saying that it was unlikely that this big conspiracy thing was really true. And in general, any big conspiracy thing generally is not true. Every once in a while you get a Watergate, but generally most things are not as big or as scary as they seem at first. So tell me I'm wrong. Wouldn't the Democrats have already said, look, I can't tell you the details, but as soon as you see the memo, you'll see that the dossier thing isn't quite what you thought it was? They would be saying that, wouldn't they? They would. Somebody saying, you are wrong. So I've got to say that the Democrats' play here was probably not as good as the president's play. So apparently the Democrats got a little extra time on their memo, because the fact that they packed their memo with sources and methods that they knew would make it unreleasable, doesn't that tell you that they don't have anything? Let me give you two scenarios. One is that the Democrats really have some good stuff and they want you to see it right away. The other is the Democrats don't have any argument, and the only thing they can do is add some confusion to the element. Which way would they go with a 10-page memo that's full of sources and methods? That's your signal that they don't have anything. So they're basically trying to milk as much as they can from the confusion and the delay, and making us think there's something in the memo for as long as possible. Because the longer we think there might be something in the memo, the more likely we'll imagine we see it. Right? So if you think there's something there for several days, and then you see it and there's not something there, a lot of people are still going to see something there because they've imagined something there for so long. They'll just see it, even if it's not there. So the other thing that happened is the Democrats missed, the entire weekend news shows cycle. So that worked a little bit in their favor, and that people still think, well, there's a memo out there, why can't we see it? But it probably works against them because we have the details of the Republican memo, but we don't have any real sense of what the other memo is. Who is Pre-Step? Somebody named Pre-Step flipped, somebody saying? I don't know about that story. How do I know it's full of sources and methods? Did I see it? That's what the Republicans are saying. So we don't know that, you're right. It's possible it's not. But you don't see the Democrats. What you don't see is the Democrats denying. Well, here's another thing you don't see. Where are the Democrats who are familiar with the letter denying that it's full of sources and methods? Have you seen any Democrats say, there are no sources and methods in our memo? Because the Republicans did say that. The Republicans said that from the start. So there's no sources and methods here. Where are the Democrats saying the same thing? There is somebody who said there's no sources and methods. Priestap was Strzok's boss. Talk about QAnon. QAnon is not real, people. As far as I can tell, it is just horoscope-like stuff that has the quality of looking real, like the Bible code. Scott, drowning in Trump's world. What does that mean? What does it mean to be drowning in the world that's winning? It's sort of like drowning in money, isn't it? I'm drowning in good news. Let's talk about Kim Jong-un's sister. So I talked about that yesterday, but quickly, as Kim Jong-un's sister is being elevated to sort of a celebrity, it makes her a competitor for the top job. Because the more credibility she gets, and some of that credibility obviously is extended to North Korea, they must be watching the Olympics too, on some level. And if they see a new Kim dynasty person emerging who's getting a lot of credibility, well, suddenly you don't worry so much about losing the top person. You got a backup right there. And if the backup might be, for example, friendlier to Western interests, it's possible. You don't know. It's possible that the West wants to pump her up to make her a viable replacement for her brother. It's possible. So we don't know how much our spook services know about her, but if she's a more moderate influence or more Western loving, it would make sense to pump her up and make her a replacement-like person just in case we need her. Somebody's telling me to look at QAnon because their statements are factual. Let me say as clearly as possible, I'm not going to go look at QAnon. I spent all of 30 seconds of my life looking at it, and it is completely obvious that it's not real. Right? It's completely obvious it's not real. Sorry. I mean, I'd love it to be real. That'd be fun. But it's not. Did I ever mention what electronic razor I use? I don't believe I have. I don't even know the model. I'm only half shaved this morning because my shaver ran out of power halfway through. And when you plug it in, it doesn't work for some reason. You have to wait till it's unplugged. Grassley Memo. I read about the Grassley Memo. What do we need to know about that other than Steele lied? Do you shave your head or is that natural? This is the number one haircut. I need to go in and get another one. Drowning in Russia connection. So I watched CNN had a special about the Russia collusion story. And I have to admit that when they put all of the Russia collusion stuff together in one story, you end up at the end of it saying, wow, how could there be so much Russian stuff and not have a real problem here? But then they always conclude with, because they have to, well, there's no collusion that's been demonstrated from the president. I think one of the most interesting keys to this whole Russia collusion story is the fact that Russian lawyer who had the meeting with Don Jr., that somehow she was banned from the country until it was just about time to have that meeting, and then suddenly she got approval at the highest level to enter the country. Now, has anybody explained that yet? I don't recall seeing any kind of answer from somebody saying why it was that they would allow her in to stir up trouble. Yeah, Veselnitskaya. Veselnitskaya, is that how you say her name? I've never seen anybody explain how she got let in. QAnon is beating me in predictions. Right? So is your horoscope. She had a court case. Oh, she got in because she had to argue a court case. Well, that's convenient. Does anybody get in just because they have some work to do? If you're banned from entering the country, do you just say, oh, I know I'm banned from the country, but I got a court case? And then they say, oh, it's a court case. Okay, you're not banned from the country anymore. I didn't realize you had a court case. Yeah, so Preet Bharara let her in. It turns out that there must have been a lot of Russians. Who were trying to sell Trump stories that didn't actually have any Trump stories. Yeah, I know about the Bill Browder stuff. Preet Bharara let her in, yeah. I'm just looking at your comments and getting ready to have a simultaneous sip. All right, you have your warning. There's a simultaneous sip coming. Grab your beverage. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Grab your beverage. Here it comes. QAnon quoted Trump's Twitter before he tweeted. No, they didn't. I don't know what you think you've seen, but you didn't see what you think you saw. I'm just looking at your comments. Are you watching the Olympics? No. Yeah, we haven't heard much about the parade lately, have we? So what do you think is going to be the big news for the coming week? Now that they got the budget done, they're going to start working on infrastructure. Do you think there'll be any good surprises in infrastructure? I think there might be some cool surprises in infrastructure. And by the way, I'm randomly bopping all around different topics, but don't you think that President Trump could get his wall by saying, I want a budget of $25 billion, and we will decide each segment of the border whether to put a wall or not a wall. So we'll decide based on, economics, and we'll decide based on how many people are getting through a certain area, that we'll just put the wall wherever we need it, and we'll have as much wall as we need, but we'll only put it where we need it. And then it would be hard for them to deny him, because it's not wall all the way. And, let's face it, it's not going to be wall all the way anyway. And then he could say, well, I got a wall. And they could say, we didn't give him a wall. We gave him money for the border. And some of it just happens to be a wall. Kim Jong-un will visit the Olympics? That can't be true. Somebody says Kim Jong-un will visit the Olympics, but I'm saying not likely. Yeah, it's not on the front page of CNN, so I'm going to say not likely. So is there anybody that you feel more sorry for? Is there anybody you feel more sorry for than Hope Hicks? Poor Hope Hicks. Oh my God. Thoughts about the court case to stop the wall. I don't see how the wall could be stopped because the wall is just a component of border security. There's no way that could be stopped. So I'm just reading your comments. What's so bad about North and South Korea unifying? It's not bad if it's unified under South Korean leadership. If it's unified under North Korean leadership, really, really bad. It's really, really bad. But the fascinating thing about this unification talk is, what do they think that looks like? When you're talking about unification, what do you hold in your mind as what that looks like? Is it under the Kim Jong-un dynasty? Because he thinks it is. This is why I've been promoting the 100-year plan for Korean unification. Because if you say it's going to take 100 years and you plan for it to take 100 years, you can say you got it done, and you could have interim steps along the way for confidence, but you don't have to make any hard decisions. You can leave that for the next generation. Yeah, I wonder if a GoFundMe page could get you very far with the wall. What's the most anybody's ever raised on a GoFundMe page? You know what, I wonder what just one segment of the wall costs. Wouldn't you like to see a price for just one of those big wall panels? The size that they put up for the wall prototypes. Wouldn't you know what just one of those costs? Because if they could put my picture on it, I might be willing to pay for a wall if they could, put a big advertisement on it that stays there forever. Because once it's built, it's going to be there forever. How do you get the Kim family to give up power? Well, I've been saying for a while that what the world needs is a special island for deposed dictators and their families. I feel like the world should just build one place that all the dictators go to live. And it could be an awesome place because the dictators would bring all their stolen money, right? So it'd be kind of a rich place. But the only requirement is they have to leave the rest of the world alone. So your whole family can move to the island of deposed dictators. You can have your own compound, live in luxury for the rest of your life. You just can't bother your old country. Somebody says, am I wrong to worry about the debt? Well, according to smart people like Warren Buffett, we can always inflate our way out of the debt if we have to. So there always is a way out. And if the growth is high enough, I suppose that would put a dent in it too. I wonder how many segments the wall has to have. Are there 10 million segments of the wall? I can't do the math. But I wonder if there's a segment per dreamer. If there are X million dreamers and X million undocumented immigrants. Am I a feminist? I believe that the word feminist is sexist. Am I wrong about that? Isn't the word feminist sexist? Because shouldn't it be humanist? If you're someone who believes that everybody should be treated the same, that would be a humanist. Humans are all equal. Or make America great again. That would be somebody who's saying at least Americans are all treated equally. But if you say you're a, quote, feminist, isn't that word sexist? Because it's got feminine right in it? You know, it kind of it seems like a dated word. You ought to be a humanist. Thoughts on Edgar Cayce. I used to read all about the Edgar Cayce stories when I was little. And when I was young, let's say young as in 12 to 14, I read all those books. He was a famous psychic from, 100 years ago. And he allegedly cured people and had a lot of correct predictions and stuff. But, as I got older and more cynical and understood how the world works, it's very unlikely that anything he did was reported correctly. It's very unlikely that Edgar Cayce was a real psychic. Very, very unlikely. So I loved watching the Trudeau episode where somebody said in a crowd said mankind, and he said, no, we call it people kind, more inclusive. And it did seem to me like he was joking. And yet it was reported like he was so uptight that he had to basically mock some woman for using the wrong term. But I didn't hear him mocking. To me, it sounded like a gentle joke. So I can't get on him about a joke. Somebody thinks that I'm a male activist. So let me tell you the background to that. So years ago, I wrote a blog post in which I made fun of male rights advocates. So I actually mocked them for thinking that life was hard, being a man. And because I mocked them, but I also mocked other people as well, people took my blog post in which I mocked male activists to believe that I am a male activist. So you can tell whoever told you that I'm a male activist that the reason people think that is because I once made fun of them. That's it. That's the entire argument for why I'm a male activist, which I'm not. I'm more of a people activist. So tell your son, I'm a people activist. I'm not a male activist. I don't see gender. Not one word about Kelly. Yeah, I'll talk about Kelly. I assume that people are saying whoever said not one word about Kelly because you think that it's negative story to the president, and I just ignore all those. But I'll tell you that the bigger picture is that I don't love the news stories about the people who have done bad things to, one or several other people. I assume most of the accusations are true most of the time. I assume some of them are not, and I assume I can't tell the difference. So certainly, if you have more than one complaint, it's more credible than if you had one. But you really can't tell. The Kelly situation is interesting because I don't think we know enough about why he knew and what he did or why he did it. Uh, but I don't know how he can keep his job if he knew about it. The trouble is, are you really going to get somebody better than Kelly? So this is one of those tough calls, because what's good for the country almost certainly is for Kelly to stay in the job. Like, let me say that again. What's good for the country almost certainly is that somebody as capable as Kelly stays in the job. Now, but if it's true that he knowingly allowed a wife abuser, he's alleged to be a wife abuser. We don't know. We weren't there. But the accusations are credible looking anyway. If he knew it, it's going to be tough to keep him. But what's best for the country is to keep him, even though it's distasteful to, well, maybe a majority of the country, I would think. What about the photo? Well, the photo of someone with a black eye does not mean that that person was punched by one person in particular. It's certainly damning evidence, and given the totality of the accusations against Porter, you would be out on a limb if you said it didn't happen. But we can't say it did. Just in terms of general fairness to people accused of things, I don't want to say it did, but I'm with the rest of you, which is we've all seen the evidence, and you can't ignore that. I thought it was funny that President Trump did his tweet about due process. So the president does a tweet in which he's saying, why don't we respect due process, talking about Porter in particular. And I thought it was genius, because everybody's afraid of Trump becoming a dictator who doesn't respect due process. So when he comes out in favor of due process, people want to go against him and say, no, we disagree with everything you say because we're anti-Trump. But they can't really disagree with due process. So in terms of persuasion, it really was brilliant that the president said, hey, what about due process? Because it's one of his weakest areas. So for him to come out in favor of due process and make his opponents take the opposite side in order to disagree with him is pretty darn clever, I gotta say. So somebody is taking my periscopes and turning them. Somebody who has an account that looks like it's me is turning my periscopes into podcasts. I haven't asked them to stop because I don't have my system working. I should have that working in a few days. And then when I have that working, I will put up the official podcasts in my blog, and I'll ask whoever's impersonating me online, I'll ask them to stop doing it. I assume that whoever's doing it is a fan, so they're not trying to do anything I wouldn't like. Saudi cleric says that there's a loosening of the Saudi dress code for women. Yes, there is. It's all interesting. When are you really starting Patreon? Well, I am signed up on Patreon. So I have a Patreon page, and people have started to donate. Just go to Patreon and search for Scott Adams Says. Just my name altogether, Scott Adams Says, and you'll find me. All right, I don't have much else to say. I'm going to go eat a bagel. So I've got over 300 patrons on Patreon. Most of them are giving, $1, $5. So they're very small amounts. All right, that's all for now. I don't have much to say today. Bye for now.